welcome to today's class on IBPS examinations. Today we will be looking at the descriptive section. Most of your exercise questions, most of your exam questions that we've seen, are from the objective kind of question stream, correct? But today we will be seeing the descriptive part or the subjective part. Okay, so the subjective part requires you to write an essay. This is a 250-word essay, and you have quite some time for it, so that's not an issue. So let's look into what it entails. So, as I said, we will be looking at essay writing for IBPS prelims. You have one essay for your IBPS prelims paper, and we will be looking at some sample questions, and I'll be telling you the best practices of how to go about with your essay. Now, in order to write an essay, what's the infrastructure that you require? Now, I would say that you need to make sure you're very well informed about what's happening. Okay, so you're just done with one class of banking awareness or your general knowledge, correct? So you do those classes as well as part of HashLearn courses. What exactly is your import from these classes? Okay, so whenever you listen to these classes, whenever you learn from these classes, also remember that you need to make sure that you understand the topics that are discussed. You need to engage in conversation about these topics, and very importantly, you need to be in a position to form an opinion based on the data provided. Okay, that is of extreme importance. See, good writing does not come without good understanding of the subject, without good reading, vast reading on the subject. Okay, so typically your banking essay questions are from current affairs. These typically are to do with opinions, so for which you will have to read a lot of newspapers. And when I say newspapers, please stick to quality publications, because it really is of no use when you read substandard stuff from very substandard news portals and newspapers. Stick to some national dailies that are of repute. Okay, in case you have any questions on what to read, just get back in touch with us via the commenting forum, and we'll probably recommend a few reads for you. Okay, so number one is your infrastructure. Remember that you have to make sure you read on what is happening in and around you. So this, we've done some study on what exactly is being asked in the essay writing topics. Typically, you are required to read up a bit on current affairs, your general banking, and of course stuff like women in jobs, etc. Something as general as that. Okay, so when you look at recent trends, for example, right now the dollar is at 74 rupees per dollar. I mean, $1 fetches you 74 rupees, correct? So you need to have an opinion on this. You should have an idea about why this is happening, or for example, your diesel and petrol prices. Okay, so you need to have a mental graph on what has been the price earlier, what is the price today, etc. Okay, and of course the reasons, what contributes to this. Have a look at employment figures. Have a look at how each industry is doing, what is happening in every sector. All of this put together will give you a very good basic understanding of how the economy works today. Okay, so that is of extreme importance. And remember, when you read on all this, and when you read quality publication on all this, you will be exposed to very good language as well, and that in turn would also help you with your English language exam part. Okay, so let's get to the essay writing basics. As I said, you're required to write a 250-word essay. You're given enough time for that. So the first thing that you do is, look at the topic. Okay, as I said, you need to have an idea on that. It is impossible for someone to write an essay, and 250 word essay at that, with something that is completely unfamiliar. So as far as you can, familiarize yourself with what's happening in and around you. Okay, so these are the best practices that I would give you. Always have a skeletal essay. So this comes with a lot of practice essays. Okay, write a few essays and get it graded. Okay, so get in touch with us, get your essays graded. We'll also have some feedback on how to do an essay, how not to do an essay, and all that. Okay, now stick to a very clear format. This is very important. Okay, the topic can be XYZ. Okay, what do you do? Number one, the first paragraph should be introduction to XYZ. Okay, then second is you have arguments, parameters, for, against. Okay, and so this is where you present your arguments to say what you mean to say. Third should be your conclusion. Now, in order to save time and to have a very good structure, okay, what I would suggest you do is give the introduction first, have the conclusion ready, because whenever you have a topic, for example, if I were to write an essay on, say, demonetization, okay, so I would have a very clear opinion on demonetization. Okay, so what I would do is, first, I know what demonetization is, so I write the introduction. Hey, you know what, this date, the government, they just put forth their GO that these notes were going to be demonetized, and this is what happened. So that much I know. I needn't really think about that. The conclusion, okay, so today demonetization has happened, and this is my conclusion on that. Okay, so this again is something that I know without much thought, because I've already given it some thought. Okay, I know which end of the spectrum I stand in. Okay, so in case you are you are expected to take an opinion, a stand, okay, you know where you stand already. So give the introduction, write the conclusion. Okay, now whatever happens in between, you have time enough to sit down and write, put it in put it in your own structure and all that. So if you do this, what's the advantage that you get? Number one, it reads very well. I have a very well defined introduction, I have a very well defined conclusion. Okay, so whatever happens in between, I've filled up as much as possible. See, remember that sometimes what happens is you might run out of time when writing an essay. Okay, so you will start off with a very splendid introduction, and you see that it's already taken 15 minutes of your time. Okay, so then what happens is you rush with your second paragraph that's got to do with the arguments. Okay, the arguments that you present, your opinion and all that. Okay, so remember that you will lag behind when it comes to the conclusion. You might be in a position where you just you have to let go of the paper before you finish it. Okay, so unless you do your time management properly and the structuring of the skeletal essay properly, okay, you will stand to lose your score there. Okay, so have a skeletal essay. This is what I'm going to say, this is what I'm going to do in in any essay. So I have a very solid introduction, I have my arguments ready, and I have a conclusion. Okay, so this is what you do. So have placeholders. So you introduce and then leave some space for the of course it's an online exam, so you have the conclusion, and then you can also have words like, firstly, I would like to say this, secondly, I would like to say this, and at the very last, I would like to say this. Okay, so it also reads very well, your essay reads very well if you put it forth, put your arguments forth in a list fashion. Okay, so for the person who's reading it, there is a very good flow of points. Okay, so what happens otherwise is you have a very solid introduction. Okay, and then what happens is the second paragraph where you actually postulate whatever you have to say, you go back and forth. There is no definite structure. Okay, so have your points ready, list them mentally, and then go forward, put them on pen and paper. Okay, so and then you conclude. Okay, the conclusion is very important because this is what the the person who is grading your paper, this is what he reads last, okay, before he gives you the grade. Similarly, the introduction is of extreme importance because that is the first impression that you create on the person who is reading it to grade your essay, right? So remember that that is why I tell you, you need a solid introduction and a very solid conclusion. Okay, then something else is stick to the word limit. If the essay is asking for X number of words, okay, you have X plus or minus, say 50 words. That's about it, okay. So make sure you stick to the word limit. It's okay if he's asking you for a 250 word essay, you need not really, curtail the entire essay or extend it to an exact 250. But it's okay if your essay is going to be, a 275 word essay or 245 word essay, okay. So stick to, X plus or minus 50, that works, okay. So have an idea about how much you read, how much you write. So when you look at the 250 word, word limit, you also have a very good idea about how much of these words you expend for your introduction, how much you save for the conclusion part, and how much you have for the content, for your own opinion. Okay, so that you must do it very, this is something that I would leave to your discretion, and this is something that is decided by the topic in hand. Okay, so let's say for example, let's just look at demonetization. The introduction part is probably going to take a little more time, a little more content than say something else. Okay, because you need to explain what happened and why was it done. Okay, so I would ideally look at bolstering my introduction, and of course I would have a very solid conclusion, but I would stick to a very concise conclusion and not spend too many words there, because I need some base to build my arguments upon. Okay, so let's look at a few sample essay questions. Okay, now look at this: cyber security and its threat to the banking industry. Okay, now what would you write when you are given such a topic? Okay, so what do you know about this? So if you're online, please let me know, and you can, you should be participating in the entire lesson. This is a very interactive session, and it's quite fun as well. You have some topics at hand, general topics. Yeah, so please let me know. Say hi if you're watching. So cyber security and its threat to the banking industry. So in this age of internet banking, your credit card, transactions online, and then there is Paytm, etc. So cyber security is very, very, very important, especially with banking. Okay, so what would I do? First and foremost, in the introduction, I would talk about cyber security today. Okay, so this would be my introduction. What is cyber security? Okay, then why is there a need? Okay, so here what I would suggest you do, so first and foremost is the introduction. I would start off saying, cyber security is of utmost importance. We do a lot of transactions. We as a, an entire population, we do a lot of transactions online. So we pay our electricity bills, for example, online. we can actually finish some transactions, some taxes online, and then very important. See, it's not every day that you do your taxes or your electricity bill, etc. But on an everyday basis, we buy so much on Amazon, Flipkart, all these places. So a lot of these places we tend to transact online. Okay, what exactly is the threat there? Someone can actually steal my data and use it against me, correct? So if I do an internet banking transaction online, someone can make use of my data, hack into my bank account and steal my money, number one. Two, it can be used to say, fund some terrorism aspects and all that, okay? So that is the larger picture as well. Then if I use my credit card details again, the same can happen. Something as simple as, for example, there was this case during the holiday rush. So you know that there is the concept of Black Friday, okay, where during Thanksgiving there are huge sales that are held in the US, okay. So what happened was a very minor a leak in data. It had nothing to do with the customers but transaction details and all that, but the shipping data was leaked. So what happened was FedEx and UPS, that's how people ship, the e-commerce dealers make use of these shipping majors to ship their e-commerce purchases to the customers, correct? So I buy something from Amazon. How does it reach me? Amazon gets in touch with a shipping partner, correct? That can be FedEx, DHL and all those, or India Post, correct? So that data was leaked, shipping data was leaked. What happened was, see, in the United States, there is no solid way of getting signatures to complete a shipping transaction unless it is stated. Okay, people actually leave parcels on doorsteps and just expect the concerned person to pick it up. Okay, because safety is not a major concern there, the way we see it. But what happened was, when the latest iPhone models went out, the shipping data that was associated with that was leaked. So Amazon or the FedEx dealer made a drop. Immediately it was picked up by someone who was not the intended consumer. Okay, so they just followed these FedEx guys and picked up the new iPhones, right? So this is what can happen on a larger scale. Okay, so why am I giving you a very solid example here? I want you to also include an example. Okay, so condense it as much as possible because you don't have many words to express what you have to say. So every word counts. Okay, so what you do is you need to make sure you condense everything, provide an example, and say, what, this happened in the past. And then you also, draw arcs from the story and say these can happen. And then you say how can it be avoided. Okay. So for example, in cybersecurity, you say major compliance issues have to be there. And then, you use the state-of-the-art data protection schemes. Then you can also talk about GDPR. What is GDPR? It is to do with the European Union's data protection laws. Okay, so let's say I run forget the e-commerce player, the electricity bill that you pay online. Okay, so it's a government site, correct? But what if there is a leak there? Okay, now I use internet banking or my credit card to transact my electricity bills online. If that data is leaked, I stand to lose, and it's a huge threat to the banking industry. Okay, so remember that in this world of internet and global e-commerce and where everything is connected, okay, So the banking industry can take a huge hit if they do not take their security compliance properly. That is why you have a two-level authentication scheme now whenever you deal with online banking, correct? What do? One, you log into your banking website, banking account, okay, with one username and password, and then you also receive an OTP, one-time password for every transaction, correct? So all of this is part of cyber security. So you need to know what is happening. You need to have an idea about all this in order to write an essay. The essay might be something very small, but you need to have an idea. Okay, so give examples and then conclude saying, cyber security is extremely important, and we need to, all our nationalized banks and other banks as well, they need to make sure that security is given maximum, cyber security is given maximum focus. Okay, let's also look at other essay questions. Okay, now look at this: recent steps by the RBI to curb cyber threats. As I mentioned in the previous example, one is the two-way authentication, or the two-step authentication. Okay, number one, you log in with a user ID and password, and then you also give your, you also receive an OTP, correct? So this is one thing that we've already seen, but remember that this is just one part of the essay. As I said, you always have an introduction, then you have your arguments, include examples here, opinions, news, facts, everything, and then have a solid conclusion. See, the conclusion is something that you can end with your own opinion, okay? So, for example, you can probably say the RBI is not doing enough to curb cyber threats because, this has happened and it's in the recent past. Or you can say the RBI is brilliant, they're doing very well in, curbing cyber threats. Look at places like Europe and UK and US. These are the things that have happened, but we have certain schemes to protect our threats, protect our cyber transactions, and here this is where we are. Okay, so remember that when it comes to an essay, there is no correct or wrong answer. It is, end of day, an opinion. It's something like, do I like black? Why do I like black? Okay, so I can choose to say I like black. I can also say no, I don't like black. I can have very different reasons from yours to like or dislike black, correct? That is why it's a subjective, descriptive paper, okay? So there is no right or wrong answer. But that being said, whether you're right or, whether you take this side or that side, you need to make sure that you give a very solid essay to put forth your ideas, okay? So if I say I like black, I should be very, convincing in order to get that proper score in this section, okay? Remember that there is a cutoff for each section. So it is important that you get something above the cutoff, correct? So here, what can you say? The introduction would probably be recent steps by RBI, correct? So the two-step authentication is something recent. This wasn't there like, say, 2 years back. Then you can also talk about, anything else that you've come across. For example, when Uber had an issue with their, them storing credit card details, so on and so forth. You can also talk about Paytm, PhonePe and UPI, all of that, okay? So the UPI and all that cannot be in function today without the RBI's approval, correct? So whatever you know on the subject, just make sure you put it forth. Now remember that there are times when you don't know enough about the subject. So give a very basic, idea, give a very basic essay. Do not state something that is entirely incorrect just because you don't have anything to say, okay? Now look at this, media and public opinion in the contemporary world, okay? So this again is very subjective. There is no right or wrong answer. The introduction would if I were to write this essay, what would I do? My introduction would be about the evolution of media and public opinion, okay? So what was it like, say, 200 years back, okay? Then I would talk about newspapers, okay? And then a very, only a very few people having the space and freedom to express their ideas. So if you were a politician, you had the clout to call a press meet and say something, okay? If you were top government officials, then you had the clout to do that. But today, that's not the case. There are several news outlets, news portals, okay? So they can express their own opinions and their own news coverage. And there is also the emergence of social media and individual opinion, okay? So I would bring that here. So today, okay? Then future. So what would happen in the contemporary world? So I would focus on the today part of this. So I would probably even forget the future, okay? So in the contemporary world, public opinion, so right now we have something that is trending everywhere on Twitter, on Facebook, on every possible news portal as well, and that's #MeToo. Correct? So I would probably talk about this as well because it touches upon public opinion and the media coverage that it has. Okay. Then anything else that I can put in here would probably be, for example, something as basic as my opinion on a government scheme. Okay. So if several individuals, see, as I said 200 years back, only select journalists, select politicians. See, the politicians and government officials, they could call for a press meet and they could, give out their statements. A journalist writing an opinion piece, he had the clout to influence people who read the papers, correct? But today, I watch something online, I see something, I have an opinion on things, I put it forth, okay? So, for example, if I have something to say against the government or for the government, I can always take to Facebook or Twitter, do that, okay? And if I have, I can just be anyone and I have freedom, I have space enough to do that. Now, you can also, bring in the idea of where it all starts going wrong, okay? Some people can also influence others in a very rude fashion, okay? Something that is not, constructive, okay? So that can be discussed here. Then your conclusion on whether this, this is sustainable or what is happening, so on and so forth. So this is how I would go about with this essay. Now remember that it says contemporary world, okay? So contemporary world, what is the meaning of temporary? Contemporary? Tempo is to do with time. Con is to do with same, okay? So contemporary world, the world that we currently live in. So it is all about current affairs, what's happening today, okay? So media and public opinion in today's world, okay? So as I said, your banking essays would be from very trending affairs of today, okay? Then we have women entrepreneurs in India, okay? Now, here you can have a very solid introduction say stuff like, earlier this was the case, okay? You can talk about literacy, you can talk about women and them coming out to work in the first place, okay? And then you can say, what helped women come out and work, and if you have the statistics or even, some idea of how many women are literate, how many women actually come forward and start their own businesses, become entrepreneurs, so on and so forth. You can start off with that. Then you can say, is it tough to become an entrepreneur, woman entrepreneur in India? Okay, what are the obstacles that she might face, or what are the conveniences that she faces here? Then you can also say, is it any different from a man entrepreneur? Does she have an easier platform? Does she have a tougher platform? Okay, then you can bring in examples. Any woman entrepreneur that you know of? Off the cuff, completely, I can talk about Kiran Mazumdar. Okay, now remember, it is about entrepreneur. Okay, so you're talking about women who run their own businesses, and of course I would like to deal with successful women. Or if you know of someone mid-level and doing pretty well, you can also mention that, hey, you know what, so there is this aunt of mine or a classmate of mine who started with this business and she's doing pretty well. These are the things that she's done. Then conclusion, here again, see, the introduction and conclusion for this particular essay have a lot of scope. Okay, so conclusion, you can probably say, when we have more women entrepreneurs, the gender diversity in this particular world, we see, for example, when you enter any corporate, there are more men than women. It's not a very healthy gender ratio, but if there are more women entrepreneurs, that can be addressed. Okay, so on and so forth. I'm just giving you a lot of ideas where you can build your essay. This is how I would write it. Okay, so think on these lines and figure out what works best for you. See, end of day, I can't write your essay. I cannot really get into your mind and say, you know what, this is exactly what you should be writing. There is no hard and fast rule. Okay, so pick up something that appeals to you, start writing first and foremost, and then figure out where you're going with that. Okay, but remember, have a very solid structure. Understanding the e-banking industry. Okay, so this is all about online banking. Today, without the banking apps on your phone, it's very difficult to function. Okay, so here the introduction would be the how convenient it is to have an online banking platform. Okay, see, as recent as say 15-20 years back, you had to actually withdraw cash from not an ATM but from a bank counter, and then say, okay, this goes here, this goes here, this goes towards grocery, this goes towards blah blah blah, whatever. But today, all of these functions can be done with an online banking app. Okay, no one bothers with cash unless, of course, it's cash is still king, say experts. Okay, but a lot of cash transactions have been digitized. Okay, so that is, of course, very convenient. Okay, now understanding e-banking industry. Remember, this is not about introducing online banking to the masses, it's about understanding. Okay, so you can talk about how this is enabled in the first place, how it is made possible. You can talk about the infrastructure that goes into it. You can talk about the security detailing that goes into it. For example, it's pretty easy, right? I mean, once upon a time, I actually had to go to a bank, a physical brick and mortar bank, sign a paper, give them my passbook, and then withdraw money. I had to fill out a check and all that, correct? It probably took 2 hours of my time. Today, and then I had to take that check, give it to whoever I intend giving it to. Today, all it takes is, one swipe. I can send money via UPI. I can send money via various platforms, correct? So you can talk about what has helped this digitization move. Okay, you can talk about UPI, you can talk about Paytm, you can talk about every single online digital transaction aid there is that you know of. Okay, then you can of course talk about what used to happen earlier. Like I said, once upon a time I did this. Today I just do this. So then you can talk about Uber, Ola, Paytm, and then see, even for Paytm I need online banking because that's how I get money and then put it in my Paytm account. Then your Amazon, then your Flipkart, everything, all your transactions are being digitized. You can talk about Digital India. You can talk about the e-banking industry across nations. Also, you can talk about the problems that it has given rise to. Okay, for example, it's it's not easy, but it's possible for someone to hack into your account and get your details, do your transactions, so on and so forth. Okay, so you can talk about all this and give a very valid conclusion. Of course, you cannot really say no. E-banking is what do you call? The end of it, and banks do not function as they used to. Okay, so understanding e-banking. Remember, if you don't know what to say, sit down and think for a moment. Okay, you know what? Before digitization, before e-banking came into existence, this is what my parents used to do. Okay, now what is happening? So all of this is being made possible online. Okay, so that is one way of looking at it. If you have anything more to add to it, please do. Okay, but remember, an introduction and a conclusion. Okay, so that's about your sample topics. Your previous contest question, look at this. The mantra to success is often, mantra is a Sanskrit word that is a borrowed word in the English dictionary. Of course, because we are Indians, we know what mantra means. Okay, the mantra to success, what you follow to be successful is often. Okay, then I am looking for a word to fill this blank. And of these, okay, I have cliche, cliched, naive, and naivete. Now, this is a noun, this is a noun, this is an adjective. Cliched here is acting as an adverb. Okay, is often, cliched. Sorry, this is an adjective, I'm sorry. So you have two adjectives and then their noun forms. What goes in here? Now remember, is often, cliched. I need an adjective here because the mantra is being described by the word here. And if mantra is being described, I go for an adjective because mantra is a noun, correct? It's not an object that we are looking at here. It is an adjective that describes mantra. Mantra is a noun. So I go for either cliched or naive. What is the meaning of the word cliche? And there is naive. So naive means innocent, while cliche means stereotype. Okay, so a typical, let's look at an example. Someone is on the Miss Universe pageant, and the question is to the contestant, if it's, if you weren't on stage here, what would you be doing? What's your dream profession? And then the person says, you know what, I would have taken social work, or I would have been a doctor. Mother Teresa is my role model, so on and so forth. So that's a very cliched answer that we listen to from these beauty pageant winners, correct? So Now you understand what cliché is. It's a French word that means stereotypical. Okay, so the answer here is cliched. And now we go to the contest question for today. So this is a very simple spot the error question. Have a look at it. It's pretty easy. So I don't think there is going to be much problem. It takes probably 10 seconds to, spot the error here. Okay, so we've done essay writing today, and most of my class has been very prescriptive. Okay, so meaning I've just recommended a few things to you. Whatever works for you works well. Now I'm saving the most important part of my essay writing advice for the summary. That is, have a very good hold on your grammar. So some tips. This end of day is about English. You have an idea, you need to put it forth. Now, the language that you employ is just as important as the idea that you put forth. Without good language, even if your idea is brilliant, you're missing something. Correct? So remember to have a very good grasp of grammar before you start writing your essays. If you aren't good enough, just make sure that you learn good grammar, write a lot, practice, and then get them graded so that you are in a good position to actually take up the exams. Okay, then spelling. You do not have autocorrect, predictive text, or any squiggly lines to tell you that you are making a mistake with the spelling. Typically, I ask my students one question. Can you write on a piece of paper, exaggerate, the word exaggerate, without a spelling error? Is it double G? Is it single G? Is it double R? Is it single R? Okay, if this is a word that we use in everyday conversation, all of us know the meaning of this word, we use it every day, correct? But are we sure of the spelling? Well, typically, not everyone is, and that's pretty unfortunate, but remember, spelling, not many get it right. In case you come across a word that you're unsure of, you're not very sure of the spelling of that particular word, or even the meaning in context, don't use that word, go for something else. Okay, so make your essay very simple. You need not really make use of very flowery words. It's completely okay to stick to a very simple language. Just do it right. Okay, so this is about your essay writing. Thank you for joining us. It's CPP time. We have put together a very good exercise package for you. That's the CPP, the class participation package. So right after class, make sure you go and do the CPP. Also remember that the CPP is open only to passport members. All right. See you then. Wish you great luck with your exams and with your immediate CPP, of course. See you then. Bye.